Hi guys, this is Professor Sarah. Welcome to my class. So last week we finished listening part of Unit 6. And today we're going to move on to page 131, okay, and start the listening part. Please open your book to page 131 and let's get started.
So we're going to read a passage called Altruism in Animals. There are 8 blanks. We're going to fill in the blanks with the words that we just read together. It shows the answers on the left side. So as we read out this passage all together, please read the words in the blanks. Also, make sure after we listen to the speaking together, you pause the video and read out by yourself the whole passage. So let's read out together. Altruism in animals. Most discussions of altruism focus on people, but what about animals? Does altruism happen in the animal world? Actually, research shows that, in fact, animals also show concern for others. For example, in one study, researchers found that female chimpanzees prefer to share their food rather than keep it for themselves. In the study, one chimp had 3 choices: feed a piece of banana to herself, feed herself and another chimp, or do nothing. It turned out that almost always the chimps chose to share the bananas. Other studies with chimpanzees show that they often take risks to help each other in dangerous situations. Scientists believe this shows that chimpanzees, like people, will choose to help others in their community even when they don't get a reward for their actions. Another study at the University of Chicago found examples of unselfish behavior in rats. In this study, one rat was locked inside a small trap with a door. Another rat showed courage by approaching the trap and learning how to open the door to free the rat inside. In another test, the free rat was given some chocolate, but rather than eat the chocolate itself, it freed the other rat and shared the chocolate. This study shows that animals will volunteer to help their own kind, but animals can also show concern for different kinds of animals or people. One famous example in Binti the gorilla. One day, a 3-year-old boy fell down into the area where Binti lived with the other gorillas at the Brookfield Zoo. The boy was badly hurt and couldn't move. Binti reacted by helping the boy. She carefully picked the door where a person could reach him and take him away. Many people were surprised and praised Binti as a hero. Your turn, please pause the video, okay? Fill out the blanks with the words and make sure read out and speak.
Okay, so altruism is not only for human beings, but it also exists between animals. For example, animals have altruism, they care of each other, maybe if they are the same species. And even though they are not the same species, they care for, they care about and they care for other species as well. So for example, chimpanzees, they show the love and their caring heart for human too, right? So that's the passage is about. Okay, now let's flip to the next page, page 132. And we're going to read or expand. Read and listen to the interview with the real-life superhero. Notice the bold-faced words and phrases. Try to guess their meanings. Okay, so we're going to listen to the short passage. And while we are listening, you can also repeat after the passage. And there are some boldfaces, words and phrases. Try to guess the meaning of it, and let's listen to it.
Move on to page 132. Expand. Read and listen to the interview with a real-life superhero. Notice the bold-faced words and phrases. Try to guess their meanings. So let's listen to the expand together.
Page 132. Expand.
So tell me, what is a real-life superhero?
Well, real-life superheroes are ordinary people like me who do good deeds in our communities.
So there are others like you?
Oh, yeah, there are many of us all around the world. We help people in need, and we try to stop crimes from happening.
But that sounds like work for the police. Why don't you just get a job as a police officer?
Well, I already have a job. I decided to volunteer as a real-life superhero in my free time because I saw too much crime in my community. I wanted to get involved and take action to stop it.
So you walk the streets trying to stop crime? Sounds dangerous. Aren't there safer ways to help out?
Well, sure. Many real-life superheroes prefer to help the poor or sick or work with volunteer groups. There are many ways to get involved and make a difference in our communities.
Stopping crime, helping others, all of these are generous things to do. It sounds like you have a good heart. But I wonder, why do you wear a mask and a superhero costume? Why don't you just wear regular clothing?
That's a good question. For me, there are a few reasons. First of all, my costume helps people to recognize me. When people see me on the street, they know who I am, and they come to me for help, and they often come up to thank me for the work I do. Kids especially love my costume. They're always so excited to see a real superhero.
Okay, I see.
But more important, I want people to notice me because I want to inspire others to get involved in their communities too. Too many people these days just don't show concern for each other, or they don't know how they can help. I want to be a role model for others and encourage them to get out and contribute in any way they can. I often hear from people who say they admire me for being so brave and helping to make our community a better place to live. That's the best reward of all.
Okay, how was it? So they're talking about a real-life superhero. Well, real-life superheroes are ordinary people like me. What's ordinary? That means maybe you can see people in your daily life, right? So it's not special people. So ordinary and special, they're opposite meanings. Okay. So ordinary people help people in need, and they are trying to stop crimes. What's crimes? So crime, it's like, bad behavior. For example, if you see and watch the news, there are criminals. Criminals commit crimes, right? Okay, but it sounds like the police officer, but they're actually not police officer. They already have a different job, so they volunteer as a superhero in their free time. So they're involved in a community, right? So real life superheroes, they try to help the poor people, okay, poor, rich, their opposite word, or maybe sick people, okay? And they are trying to make a difference in their community. They are trying to change their community. So they are usually generous. They have a big heart. They have a good heart, right? And they are wearing a special costume. So this guy is wearing a special costume because it's easy to recognize. So for people, if they see a person in a special costume, they recognize him and they can get the help easily. Maybe on the street or in community. Especially kids love his costume. Okay, so he wants to inspire people so people can get involved in the community better. Okay, and he wants to be a role model. What's a role model? So it's a good example, right? So maybe for kids, he wants to be a good example for kids so they can also help people, okay? And they can make a difference too. Okay, so this is the passages that we read together. So please pause the video and read out and speak out. Okay. Now we are going to move on to page 133. Number 2, match the words and phrases on the left with their meanings on the right. Okay, so number 1 to 10, there are some phrases and words, and A to J, there are some definitions. I'll give you a few minutes. Please match them.
Okay, let's check the answers. Number 1, contribute. It's E, to give something such as money, time, or goods to a person or a group. Number 2, do good deeds. It's F, do something kind or helpful. Number 3, get involved. It's J, to participate in an activity or event. Number 4, generous. It's B, happy to give to or help others. Number 5, have a good heart. It's I, to be kind. Number 6, recognize. It's D, to know and remember, to give special attention or notice. Next one is number 7, to inspire. To encourage someone to do something by making them feel confident and eager. Number 8, role model. It's C, a person whose behavior and attitude others try to copy because they respect them. Number 9, admire. It's H, to feel respect or approval for someone or something. Number 10, it's make a difference. It's G, have a positive effect on someone or something. Please check your answer. Okay, moving on, let's turn to page 134. Grammar for speaking. Number 1, read the paragraph. Underline the verbs that talk about the past, then answer the questions. Okay, last month I decided to start volunteering in my community. Yesterday I started my volunteer job at a homeless shelter, where I helped to prepare meals for the people staying there. At the end of the day, I was happy knowing I made a difference in their lives. A, notice the form and spelling of the past tense verbs. What do many of them have in common? Hint, look at the last couple of letters. B, which past tense verbs don't fit that pattern? How are they spelled? Okay, so in this small paragraph, they're talking about the past experience that happened in the last month. Okay, so last month, I decided to start volunteering in my community. Look at this sentence. What's the past tense verb that is used in this sentence? It is I decided. I decided to start. Okay, and it keeps talking about the past tense. Yesterday, I started my volunteer job at homeless shelter where I helped to prepare meals for people staying there. So at the end of day, I was happy knowing I made a difference in their lives. Okay, so I highlighted past verbs in green and in pink. What's the difference? For example, past tenses, verbs that are in the green end with ed, okay? And was, made that are in pink, they don't end with ed, okay? So decided, started, was, made, they're all, past tenses verbs, so they are answer for A. But B, which past tense verbs don't fit that pattern? How are they spelled? Okay, so most of the cases they finish with ed, but was and made, they don't fit in the pattern. They are spelled in a different way. So we're going to talk about simple past. Okay, so number 1, simple past. We use the simple past tense to talk about action that finish at a specific time. So past tense used to describe a specific time, and here it's yesterday. So for example, yesterday I started my volunteer job, and it used the past tense of ed, which is started. Number 2, to form the simple past tense for regular verbs, add ed to the base form of the verb. So simple past, there is a regular form and irregular form, and usually they end with E, and then we add only D. If the verb ends in a consonant, what's consonant? Consonant, it's different from vowel. Vowel, it's I, A, E, O, U, so A, E, I, O, U, and consonant, it's like B, C, D, not E, F, G. Okay, that's consonant. So if the verb ends in a consonant, then it's plus Y. It changed the Y to I, and then we add ed. So let's look at the example. So for start, we just, add ed. For decide, it ends with E, so we just add D. Try, Y, it's consonant, it's not vowel. The vowel, it's only A, E, I, O, U. So we change to I, and then we add ed. It's very simple, right? So many verbs have irregular past tense form, okay? So if it's not simple past, regular form, it's irregular. Irregular and regular, they are opposite, okay? They are different from each other. And base form, it's like this: be, choose, come, do, fall, find, go, have, hold, get, give, make, meet, see, take, win. And simple past, they're changed completely. And there is no same pattern, there is no same rule, and you have to memorize it and remember it. So for example, was, were, I was, she was, they were, you were. Chose, came, did, fell, found, went, had, held, got, gave, made, met, saw, took, won. So remember the simple past. Number 4, in negative statements, use did not. Okay, so it's did not, it's negative. Base form. Use didn't, speaking and informal writing. So didn't, it's commonly used. Okay, so for example, the woman didn't see the train coming. Okay. Number 5, time markers or phrases that indicate different times usually come at the beginning or end of a sentence. So for example, ago, you can use it after a length of time, such as 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago. So look at the example. I started volunteering a month ago. A month ago, I started volunteering. Okay, next one is last. So last one is used before words like night, week, or year. I saw an accident last night. I watched Netflix last night. My friends met together last week. Use in with names of months. Okay, for example, in November, spring, summer, winter, fall, in summer, and year, in 2018, in 1963. So for example, in 2011, okay, in 2011, he became a real-life superhero. Use on for days like Monday, on Monday, and dates, July 4th. So you have to be careful. If there is only July, it's in July, but it's July 4th, it's date. So it's on July 4th. And for time, it's at. So the crime happened on May 23rd. Okay, if it's only May, then it's in May, but there is a date. At 11 p.m. This is important because many people are confused. Questions in the simple past have the same form for regular and irregular verbs. So yes or no questions follow the form. For example, did, subject-based verb, okay? And WH, okay, in the past begin with the question word followed by did, okay? And question would be are formed by putting was and were. It's hard to explain, so let's look at the example. It's so much easier when you look at the example. Did he save the man? Yes, he did. Okay. Did you see him jump? No, I didn't. Okay. So did. Okay. Save, see. Save and see, okay, they are not changed to the past tense. You know, they are present tense because did in did is already, the past tense is used already in did. So you don't have to change save and see. What did you do? When did you do? How did you do? Why did you do? Where did you go? Okay, so you can just change WH. Were you surprised? Yes, I was. Were you shocked? No, I wasn't. Was he surprised? Yes, he was. Okay. So this is very simple, and I know that you already, learned this from your high school or, maybe middle school. But when you speak and, make sentences in writing or conversation or maybe presentation, you still make mistakes by conjugating. So for questions, you have to, not forget, you don't use past tense for save, see, because you already used did at the front. Okay. And, in, on, it's different. A lot of people are confused with that. Okay, so just pay attention to in and on and use in a different way. Okay, so moving on, now we're going to move to number 2. Complete the conversation with the past tense form of the verbs in parentheses. Okay, so in this parenthesis, you're going to use the past tense form and change the verb. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes. Okay, make sure you stop watching it and pause the video. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes and please fill in the blanks and change the form, and we're going to check the answer together. Let's check the answer together. It's a conversation between Oscar and Diego. Hi, how was your weekend? It was pretty good. I studied most of the weekend. I'm writing a research paper for my psychology class, so I went to the library to do some research. So what's your topic? I'm writing about altruism. Why some people are altruistic, and want to help others, but other people don't. That's interesting. What? And then it's number 5. What did you find out? Okay, find out, it's not change. And Diego said, I learned about some research studies that compare the brain activity of different people. In one study, they used machines to look at pictures of people's brain. They found that the brains of people who chose to give money to help strangers were more active in certain areas compared to the brains of people who wanted to keep the money for themselves. Okay, please check the answer. Some are simple past and regular verb, but some are irregular. So make sure there is a difference, okay, and choose the correct answer. Okay, now let's change to page 137, pronouncing ed endings. So pronunciation rules. Ed ending as a syllable when the verb ends in a T or D sound. Ed ending is pronounced ed or ad. So for example, there are simple past and they usually end with ed, but the sound, the pronunciation is different. For example, it ends with id or ed or ad. So let's look at example. Decide. When you pronounce it, it's decided. Decided. Want. Wanted. Okay. Next one. Ed ending does not add a syllable, but makes a final t sound. When the verbs ends in a voiceless sound. A sound that doesn't use the vocal cords. For example, t. It doesn't have a big sound, it's a voiceless sound. So for example, work, worked, worked. Help, helped. Miss, missed. Laugh, laughed. So it's different from ed sound, it's just t sound. Next, ed ending does not add a syllable but makes a final d sound when the verb ends in a vowel sound or a voice sound, a sound that uses the vocal cord. So as I mentioned, vowel, what's vowel? It's A, E, it's hard to write it, I, O, U, right? So A, E, I, O, U. So try, tried, train, trained. Okay, so it makes a this sound because it ends with voice sound and vowel sound. For example, Y, it's not vowel, but it's vowel sound. Okay, vowel and vowel sound is different. Okay, so now let's move on to number 2 and listen to more example. Listen to the past tense verbs, write the verbs in the correct column, check your answer with the partners, and practice saying the verb aloud. Okay, so let's listen to it and split. So first one, ed, it's it sound like wanted. Next one, it's t sound like worked. And last one is did sound like tried. Okay, so we're going to listen to the verbs, okay, the past tenses of the verbs together.
Page 137. Pronunciation. Exercise 2.
Arrived. Carried. contributed, covered, inspired, jumped, passed, praised, pushed, reacted, saved, showed, thanked, turned out, visited, waited,
Page 137. Pronunciation. Exercise 2.
arrived, carried, contributed, covered, inspired, jumped, passed, praised, pushed, reacted, saved, showed, thanked, turned out, visited, waited,
Check the answer together. So ed, okay, ed sound, it's contributed, reacted, visited, waited. T sound, it's jumped, pushed, thanked. Okay, it's shorter than id sound, ed sound, right? Next one, the sound, arrived, carried, covered, inspired, passed, praised, saved, showed, turned out. Okay, please check your answer.
So we talk about different pronunciation of simple past verbs. So some words are pronounced eat, t, and d. Okay, so when you pronounce some words, make sure you know the difference between ed, okay, simple past verbs. For example, want, wanted, wait, waited. It's id sound. Thanked, pushed. It's t sound. It's totally different, okay? But if you pronounce, for example, thanked, pushed, it's very different and it sounds very weird. So you have to know the correct pronunciation for each word. Okay, so now let's flip to the page 138 and look at number 3. Work with a partner. Complete the sentences with the correct past tense verbs from the box in exercise 1. Not all of the words will be used, then put the sentences in the correct order to tell Wesley Autry's story. Practice telling the story to your partner. Remember to use ed endings with correct pronunciations. Okay.
Exercise 1, we're going to use the words that are in the box in exercise 1. If you go back to page 137, okay, there is a box and there are many words that finish with ed. Please choose the words, okay, from this box and fill in the blanks for page 138. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes. Okay, you don't have to use all of the words. Okay, so please fill in the blanks with the simple past ed verbs, and we're going to check the answers. Okay, let's check the answer together. And there is an order, okay? So you have to make sure there is... Okay, and also you have to use the correct order, okay? This story... Okay, so this story is about Wesley Autry, and you have to put the correct order so it makes a... Okay, so this story is about Wesley Autry, and put the sentences in the correct order so it can make senses. Okay, so now we're gonna do the questions, and we're gonna check the answer together. Okay, so if you look at page 138, they ask you to use the words from exercise 1. So if you go back to page 137, there are many words in this box. Please use the words from this box. You don't have to use all of it. Just choose a few, words and fill in the blanks for 138. You also have to put the correct number, okay, so it can make sense for Wesley Autry's story. So please put the sentences in the correct order. Okay, write number 1, 2, okay, and then fill in the blanks with the simple past verbs. I'll give you a few minutes, okay, and then we're gonna check the answer together. Okay, let's check the answer together. So number 1, Wesley Autry reacted quickly when he saw Cameron Hollow-Peter fall onto the subway tracks. Number 2, first, he jumped down onto the track. Third, then he pushed Mr. Hollow-Peter into the space between the tracks. Pushed, it's T sound. Jumped was also T sound. Number 4, he covered Cameron Hollow-Peter's body and held him down. Number 5, fifth, he waited for the train. Number 6, the train arrived 6 seconds later. Number 7, it passed over the top of the two men. Number 8, luckily everything turned down okay. Number 9, later that day, Cameron Hollow-Peter's parents thanked him for saving their son's life. Lastly, number 10, 2 days later, the mayor of New York City praised Wesley Autry for his brave actions. Okay, please check your answers.
Okay, so we checked the answers, okay, for pronunciation. And now moving on, we're going to talk about some presentation skills. So we talked about some basic presentation skills before, and also we used these skills to make a presentation before. Okay, now we're going to talk about some phrases that can be used in presentations. There are signal phrases. What are the signal phrases? So for example, I want to talk about topic. This is my topic. I want to introduce my topic. And if you just talk about topic right away, it might be, not so much smooth. So presentation is all about flow. So you have to make the flow smooth and soft, okay? And to make it better flow, you can use signal phrases. This is for, introducing your topic, main idea, maybe some supporting details, okay? So let's talk about it in detail.
Okay, so using signal phrases in presentation. We use signal phrases in presentation to introduce the topic and to signal a new idea or supporting detail. Signal phrases help the audience to understand your organization and follow your ideas. So introducing your presentation. It's important to get, audience attention in the beginning of your presentation, okay? So how can you do that? You can do it by asking questions or making a general statement, and then you can introduce your topic. If you just introduce your topic right away, by skipping this process, it'll be very, direct, and it'll be not so much interesting. And this process, you need it, you need this process of asking a question and making a general statement in order to get audience attentions. So for example, how many of you have a hero? What do you think the word hero means? Every year, many crimes happen in our city. There are many ways to define a hero. Today, I like to talk about, my topic today is, and then you introduce your topic. If you just introduce topic today, I like to talk about hero, then, it's not so much interesting. You have to grab the attention of the whole audience. So this process is important. Okay, so after you introduce your presentation, now you're making transition. There are different kinds of signal phrases, okay? When you introduce your points and then transition from one point to another. So after you introduce your topic, you can give examples and make a movement. Transition is going to the next step. So introduce points. Let me start with, first, I like to tell you, first of all, okay? And then you're moving on to next point, transition. Then you say, next, I want to tell you, now, why is she my hero? Okay? So you are using, these sentences to make, transition to the next point. And then you are making list of the points. So you're listing new points. Maybe by giving examples or details. Okay? So when you give example, it's very easy. For example, let me give you an example. For instance, how about when you're listing points? One reason is that, one factor is that, another reason is, a final reason is. So you don't have to use all these sentences, but these are very good examples when you're making a transition point, introducing points, listing points, and giving examples. Moving on. So now you have to make a conclusion, concluding your presentation. So you can use concluding phrases, okay? Let's talk about the example. So now you can see, this is why I think hero is very important in your life. I hope that you understand what hero means and find your own hero in your daily life. Okay? And you can conclude it. Okay. So next time you make a presentation, you can use these sentences. Okay? When you introduce your topic, when you're making transition, and when you are making concluding sentences for your presentation. Okay, so presentation skill is very important, not only for this class, but for your future. especially when you are employed, at a company in the future. Business presentation skill, it's really important, and you can use these skills in your daily life as a routine. So how can you make a good presentations, especially focusing on business? Okay, so now we're gonna watch a small video clip from Oxford, okay, about how to make a good business presentation. This is very important skills, so I hope you pay attention, okay, and listen carefully.
Hi, I'm Gina. Welcome to Oxford Online English. In this lesson, you can learn how to make a presentation in English.
Do you have to make presentations in English in your job? Imagine you had to give an important presentation in English tomorrow. How would you feel about it? This lesson will help you learn useful phrases and techniques to introduce yourself and your topic, keep your ideas organized, deal with problems, and respond to questions from audience members.
Imagine you're standing in front of your colleagues. You need to introduce yourself and what your presentation is about. What are some words and phrases you could use?
If some people in the audience don't know who you are, you should introduce yourself and your position. In a more formal setting, you could say something like this. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Simon, and I work in the marketing department. Or, hello, everybody. Before we begin, let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Reese, and I'm the head of HR.
If you work in a more informal company, you could say, Hi, guys. If you don't know me, I'm Sylvia, and I work in digital marketing. Or, hello. I see some new faces. So I'll introduce myself first. I'm Julia, and I'm one of our customer service team. Next, you need to introduce your topic.
If your presentation topic is simpler, you could just say one sentence, like this. Today, I'm going to be talking about our new HR policies and how they affect you. Or, I'd like to talk to you today about quality control and why we're all responsible for quality control, whichever department you work in.
If your topic is more complex, you might add more detail to break your idea into stages. For example, I'll begin by outlining the policies, and then I'll go on to highlight what they mean for you and your working habits. Finally, I'll briefly discuss why we feel these new policies are necessary and beneficial for us all.
Here's another example. First of all, I'll explain why quality control has a broader meaning than you might expect. I'll continue by giving examples of real quality control and why this matters for all of us. To finish, I'll be asking you to think of ways you can incorporate quality control into your working habits.
Here, you saw two examples. You can use these as templates to begin your presentation. I'll begin by, and then I'll, finally, I'll, or, first of all, I'll continue by, to finish, I'll. Okay, now you can practice. We'd like you to do two things. First, practice introducing yourself informally and explaining your topic in a simple way with one sentence. Then, practice introducing yourself formally and explaining your topic in a more detailed way. Pause the video and practice speaking. All the language you need is in this section. Ready? Let's move on.
I'm sure that in your life you've heard good speakers and bad speakers. Good speakers grab your attention and don't let go. You want to hear what they have to say. You feel interested and energized by listening to them. Bad speakers are the opposite. Even if you try to make yourself listen, your attention drifts away. Your eyelids feel heavy and you have to struggle to stay awake. So, here's a question. What's the difference between good speakers and bad speakers? And how can you make sure you speak effectively when you make your presentation in English?
Here's one way to think about it. Bad speakers don't think they have to earn your attention. Good speakers understand that no one has to listen to them, so they work hard to make you want to pay attention. What does this mean for you and your presentation? Getting people's attention starts from the beginning. You need to make it clear what people should expect from your presentation and why they should care about what you have to say. Sounds like a nice idea, but how do you do this?
Here are 3 techniques you can use. 1. Establish a problem that many people in your audience have. Then, establish that you have a solution to their problem. For example, have you ever felt unfairly treated at work? Or felt that the work you do isn't appreciated? We've been working to make new HR policies that will make sure all staff get fair recognition for their contribution to the company. In this way, you can take a boring-sounding topic like HR policies and make it more relevant to your audience. How? By connecting it with their experiences and feelings.
The second technique? Mention an interesting fact or a surprising statistic to get people's attention. For example, did you know that the average office worker spends 8 hours a day at work, but only does 4 hours of productive, useful work? I'm here to tell you about quality control and how you can use this idea to make better use of your time.
Finally, you can engage people by telling a short story and connecting it to your topic. Stories are powerful and they can add an emotional dimension to your topic if you do it well. For example, I once met a young salesman. I won't mention his name. He spent several weeks building a relationship with a potential client. He worked overtime and he was working so hard that he was under severe stress, which started to affect his personal life. In the end, he didn't close the deal. The client signed with another firm. Today, I'm going to talk about confidence as a sales tool and how you can avoid the traps that this young man fell into. Use one of these 3 techniques in your introduction to connect with your audience and show them why they should be interested in what you have to say. Here's a question for you. Which technique would you prefer to use, and why? Okay, now you've introduced your topic and have everyone's attention. What next?
There's a famous quote about making presentations. Tell the audience what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you've said. Have you heard this before? Do you know who said it? This comes from Dale Carnegie, a very successful American salesman and writer. He lived a long time ago, but his advice is still relevant today. So here's a question. What does the quote mean?
It means that your presentation shouldn't just give information. You also need to show people how your information is organized. To do this, you need signposting language. Let me give you an example to explain. Imagine you go to a website. The website is full of really useful, interesting information, but the information is all on one page. There's no organization, and you have to scroll up and down this huge page trying to find what you need. Would you stay on that website? Probably not. You'd find a website which made it easier for you to find the information you needed. What's the point here?
The point is that having interesting or relevant information is not enough. How you structure and organize your information is equally important. If you don't structure your presentation clearly, people won't pay attention, just like you won't stay on a website if you can't find the information you want. So how can you do this? You use signposting language. This means using words and phrases to show the audience where your points begin and end, to show what's coming next, and to remind them about things you talked about before.
For example, okay, that covers the new policies. Next, I'd like to move on and discuss what these policies mean to you. Or, now that you've heard a bit about what not to do, let's focus on positive advice to help you be more effective salespeople and close more of your leads. When you say something like this, you aren't giving people information about the topic of your presentation. Instead, you're showing people where you are and where you're going next. It's a kind of signpost. You don't need signposts to travel from one place to another, but they can make it easier. What else can you use signposting language for?
You can use signposting language to move from one point to the next. For example, next, I'd like to talk about, let's move on and discuss, or, at this point, I'd like to turn to.
You can use signposting language to add detail to an idea. Let me go into some more detail about. Let's examine in more depth. Or, I'd like to elaborate on.
You can use signposting language to show that you finished your main points and you've reached your conclusion. To wrap up, let's remind ourselves of why this should matter to everyone here. Let's review the key points from this session. So, you've heard what I have to say. What conclusions can you take away from this? If you have an important presentation in English, practice using signposting language. Use signposting language to move between points to show when you're giving a summary or going into more detail, and to signal that you've reached your conclusion. Okay, but things don't always go so smoothly in real life. We know that. Let's look at some advice and language for dealing with problems during your presentation.
Imagine you're making your presentation in English. What could go wrong? What problems could you have? There are many common problems. You might forget where you were or forget an important word. You might realize that you said something wrong or you didn't explain something clearly. You might forget to mention something important. Or someone might ask you an awkward question which you have no idea how to answer. Of course, there are other possibilities. Let's think about these problems. What can you do? And more importantly, what can you say in these situations?
First of all, it's a good idea to make a cue card with key points as well as any important vocabulary you need. If you lose your place or you forget a word, it could help. However, you can't prepare for everything, so it's useful to learn some phrases to deal with problems smoothly. If you lose your place and can't remember what to say next, you can use a filler phrase, like, where was I? So, what was I saying? What's the word in English again? If you still can't remember, look at your cue card with your main points. Of course, forgetting something isn't ideal, but if you do, it's better to keep talking rather than just standing there in silence. What if you make a mistake, or you realize that you didn't explain something well?
You could say, let me rephrase that. Actually, what I meant to say is, to clarify, I wanted to say that. In this way, you can correct yourself without admitting that you made a mistake. What if you realize that you forgot to mention something important?
Use a phrase like this. Let me just add one more thing. I'd like to add something to a point we discussed earlier. Let me return to an earlier point briefly. Again, this allows you to correct your mistake in a confident way so you look like you're in control. Finally, what do you do if someone asks you a difficult question which you can't answer?
You have a few options. First, you can delay giving an answer. For example, I've allocated time for questions at the end of this session, so we'll address your idea later. Or, I'm not in a position to answer that right now, but I'll get back to you later this week. This gives you time to think of an answer and do some research if you have to.
Next, you can deflect the question by asking a question back, or maybe by asking other audience members what they think. For example, that's an interesting question. Before I answer, I'd like to know, what's your take on this? Or, you've raised an important point there. What does everyone else think about this?
Finally, if the question is irrelevant, you can dismiss the question and move on. For example, thanks for your input, but I don't see how that's connected to what I'm saying. I don't mean to be blunt, but I don't think that's relevant to today's discussion. Notice how you can use phrases like, thanks for your input, but, or, I don't mean to be blunt, but, to make your language more indirect and polite. So, for dealing with difficult questions, just remember the 3 Ds. Delay, deflect, dismiss.
Finally, we want to ask you something. Do you have any advice for giving good presentations in English or any language? We'd love to hear your ideas. Please leave a comment and tell us what you think.
Remember to visit our website for more free English lessons, oxfordonlineenglish.com. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Okay, so in this unit, we talk about a lot of things. What's altruism? And what's hero? Hero is not someone special. It can be someone you meet in your daily life. Hero is ordinary person, and they have maybe different background. They're raised, and they're told to be kind to people and help people. So they don't, they are not afraid of taking risk. Okay? They like to take risk and they believe this is the right thing to do. We also talk about altruism not only in people but also, in animals too. Animals also care of each other. They also care of human. Okay? So sometimes, there is a saying that animals are better than people. It's kind of funny, but, it shows that altruism exists among animals too. What did we talk about? We also talk about pronunciation and grammar. So simple past, it's ed, regular verb, and irregular verb, they change it. So you have to remember the form of irregular verb and regular verb as well. Also, when you're pronouncing ed, simple past, verbs, the pronunciation can be different. Sometimes it ends with id, eat sound, sometimes t sound, sometimes d sound. Lastly, we talk about some presentation phrases, like the signal phrases. So for example, when you're introducing topic, main idea, details, if you don't use these signal phrases, the flow can be less smooth. Okay, so how was this chapter? We talked about a lot of things. Please do not forget the lessons we did together. Okay, thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, comments, please let me know. And I will see you next time. Bye!